All right, everyone. So hope you guys are doing good. Long day. So great. And I know the Portugal flag is here. So you might be thinking what's going on out there. So I'll not try to bore you guys enough and keep it somewhat interesting and engaging. Today I'm going to talk about second brain. And just a raise of hand, how many of you have already heard this term, second brain? Thanks to Andrew NG. Great. And how many of you have already tried making your own second brain even better? Okay, very cool. So today what I'm going to talk about is my experience on building second brain and how to use a second brain. Nobody talks really about it. So a few core ideas that I want to iterate today. Memory must build itself. The graph is the structure and time is its first principle citizen that needs to exist and making it accessible everywhere. So let's recap a little bit what happened in the era of software engineering, AI, and everything. We started from the times where we were using different kinds of tools, notes, WhatsApps, telling your wife, or using Obsidian or notes, right? Remember that. And then we migrated from there to let's throw AI on everything. Let's connect Notion with AI. Notion came up with a Notion AI. And we are building Obsidian clubbed with Cloud Code. Somewhat it works, right? And with that, now we are migrating into somewhat called knowledge graph based native brains, second brains, which are fundamentally a little different, which is what I will be deep diving inside towards because that's my expertise. And I've been building AI technologies for 14 years now and enterprise and knowledge graph systems for 7 years. So I have some idea around what works, what does not work, and I'll be bringing it to you guys so that you guys can create your own and have a template for yourself. So this is my interface, how I see the solution should look like on an ideal scenario. Change it as you feel like, but this is what I'm observing. We have a 3-layer challenge right now. First is the intake layer. How do we feed this information into the system? We have a consumption layer. How do we use the system? What is the convenience way to opt for it? And on the middle is the knowledge graph, which is our ground truth, which is the source. You guys might be thinking, where's LLM here? We are talking on an LLM day. LLM is basically powering knowledge graph to harness the information, structure it, and store it. Because we have been doing it ourselves, putting things in the folder or tagging it and giving different kinds of templates to store this. And what I will be diving in the intake layer is how we can take and create an invisible interface. From that invisible interface, how do we design a heuristics on what to save and then filter those noise? So I'm talking about mouse clicks, scrolling a web page, looking at a podcast, so all those kinds of behaviors. And on the endmost, having some kind of interface to consume this information, be it MCP, be it API calls, or be it some kind of WhatsApp conversation from Harness and all these new OpenClaw and technologies that they're using to integrate WhatsApp and all that Omni interfaces. And in the center, where is the knowledge graph? Like, how does it look like? How to design a knowledge graph? How it should look like? Why it is important? And what are the philosophies to design a working knowledge graph system? So let's dive into it. First idea: memory must build itself. Why this is important? Brain taking inspiration from our biological existence, our brain does not store information. It connects neurons, neuron pathways, and over the period of exposure of more iterations, it builds those connections. And that's how I remember your name, you remember my face, and so on, right? Taking that inspiration and knowing how we have been doing data storage till date was a file cabinet. We will take a document, tag it, label it, and save it. Maybe use color coding to look even fancier. Maybe use a Notion template, even may make it more complicated. That was how we were using it. We were efficient enough on that, but it takes a lot of time to do it. And it takes a lot of time to recollect on it. The idea where we are heading towards is like inspiration from the brain, where we can learn, we can unlearn, and we can relearn. This is a concept which is really hard in AI even today. LLMs can be tuned, fine-tuned. They're learning on top of the ideas, but we're never unlearning and relearning the iterations. So this is where we will be heading towards building the system. And when I was talking about the intake layer to be invisible, this is very important because the way how our brain works, we don't have a notebook all the time in our hand and thinking that, okay, I will note everything down and remember it or save it somewhere. We have our sensory, eyes, ears, nose. These are subconsciously capturing these information without us paying too much attention. And that is what is very important to have a successful implementation of a second brain. And what I'm talking about in digital world, how do we interact with our digital world? Through mouse gestures, through moving and reading a web page. For if you like a blog post, you might be reading. If you don't like a website, you might close it in 5 seconds. That's not interesting. But if you're interested, you go deep into it and you're like already into 30 seconds into it. That's a signal. If you're liking a post on LinkedIn, somebody wrote, or a Twitter, you like the post or you repost it, that's something interesting to you. And that specific thing is really important because that's giving you a taste. What you're saving is your preference. And that behavior observation is the nature that you want to store and recollect later on. So this is why it is so important to have this invisible capturing interface. And on top of that, like I have this version of mine, and I'm very lazy by nature of saving things. So I go here, you can see I like this post from Peter, and this wobbly thing would basically tell me that, okay, I've saved this information. I took the text and saved it. I'm looking into a podcast, which I really liked. If I've already watched the podcast, more than 50% of it, it will automatically go and save it. I don't have to do anything. It will transcribe the video and it will save it. GitHub repo. Most of the developers, we love saving GitHub repos. We start them, we save it somewhere, and things like we will use later somewhere in this project. It's a really cool repo, right? We save it, but how many oftentimes do you guys go back and look into your saved repos? Very less. I don't. So I tagged it into the star. Like if I click a star, it should just save it. And similarly for the blog post, as I was talking about, if you scroll enough and you're reading the content, you're basically interested into it and you save it. So this is how I look into building an invisible interface of capturing information. And this beats the manual tagging and manual annotation for 4 big reasons. First one, zero interruption. When you guys are in a coding session or a session where you're really focused, you're in a workflow, you're in your flow state, you don't want interruptions like, oh, this is a really good video I'm listening to. Let me save it into my notebook. It does not happen like that. Maybe you'll do it, but it's really effort creation, friction flow creation process. Second is the non-attention loss. You don't lose your attention in this whole workflow because it's invisible. You don't see it happening. It just happens. You don't have to maintain a discipline. Thank God. I don't have to maintain this Notion template forever or my life. I have tried so many templates, so many philosophies of productivity gurus and productivity health saving, time saving approaches. It does not really work. You have to have a practice, and over a period of time, you went to a wedding and then you're not maintaining that notebook. You've gone for a week and then you're just out of the loop. So these are the things that are 4 big reasons, I think, which makes the invisible intake layer more efficient. Now let's talk about the graph structure. This is the core crux, heavy juice on how to build a working second brain. So first thing first, entities and relations are the way to save information. When we say something, if I made a note of a hotel when I was traveling to Portugal, what was the context behind why did I like this restaurant or this hotel? That kind of a thing is a relational information that we want to store. We humans perceive things by relations, by referencing and inferencing things between 2 different objects, entities, or concepts. This is what graph provides us. LLM does a great job on putting everything on a latent space on a similarity basis, but this works differently. You have nodes and entities, you have objects and relations, and then you connect the dots between those things. And the chunking approach, which is very traditional approach of doing any kind of RAG, does not really work here. As soon as you break down a document into separate chunks, you are basically losing the relation between the context across these document chunks, which is failing the concept of having a memory itself. So that's why it is counterintuitive to use the chunking approach or any kind of RAG approach. And that's why the graph is a best fit, in my opinion, on building the graph systems, second brains. Another most important thing is having the time as the first principle. Previously, the speaker was talking about coming up with a parameter of recency, really important thing. None of the LLMs today can be claimed to have a concept of time and space. They are independent of time and they are independent of space. And this is why what graphs gives you a fundamental approach of having time to be stored as one of the core property of the substance. So let's say if Portugal wins today, and if I'm looking for the research on my own database, like what happened to the Portugal, and maybe it win, maybe it does not. It might not know. My cloud might not know because it was not recently updated with the latest information. So this is why the time as the first principle is really important, because we always evolve our memory. You go to a restaurant, you go to another place, you know something over the period of time, you're constantly evolving, and hence the memory is evolving. And similarly, that property needs to exist into a second brain. This is really important. And then it comes to be like a very specific thing about why knowledge graph does not work so many times, because you don't have an understanding about what persona I am, what information I like. Do I like restaurants? Do I like landscapes? So here you can see 3 examples. Founders have decisions, clients, patterns, insights. These are core ideas that a founder might preserve, whereas a go-to-market engineer might look for prospect signals, playbooks, and objectives. The relations are different. The learning components are different. So if we don't have a distinguished ontology on top of it for a specific persona, this knowledge graph is not going to work. It will again be something like ChatGPT giving generic answers, which is what we don't want, and which is why we are building secondary on the first hand. So having a personalized ontology is really important. And this is one of the experiments from my experience on building the second brain, running different experiments on different kinds of databases. Falcon came out to be the one of the best performing knowledge graph database system. For the primarily, one of the biggest reason was the native multi-tenancy. One graph can hold multiple users in one instance. So for instance, if you have your work versus your personal, you want to separate these two things, you can just use Falcon DB to initiate one instance and it will have it hold it there. I like the experience of meme graph, but the meme graph, the situation with it was fast. It had everything in memory. You can hold all the concepts, all the graphs in memory. It's fast, but it does not have the concept of multi-tenancy, which is an enterprise solution. And if you're building for yourself or for your company or for your client, it does not really work well in those situations. And Neo4j has been talked a lot in the market. They were one of the primary ones who coined out the terms and lots of into the market, but they're overkill for the use cases. Good for the enterprise solutions, but not for your personal second brain or for a client who are less on budget, let's say, for that. And this is another key secret that makes the knowledge graph systems work. How do we retrieve information? You can see there are multiple methods. All of them are optional or a combination of a play. Hide is one of the way how we use LLM's hallucination as feature, not a bug. So what we are doing in hide is basically we are giving a query to an LLM, asking it to go in different neuron pathways, give me an answer in all your possibilities. We are expanding the search horizon and drilling down on doing the latent cosine similarity to find the latent spaces, and go further down with the keyword search to find in that, go deep into that direction, and then use in the end a graph traverser approach to do multi-hop search. Might be a word which is very much weird to hear about, multi-hop, but it's basically moving from one dot to another to finding connections which are relevant. And combining all these things together, you basically get a really resonating results, which helps you to get exactly to the point where you want to look for information. Now let's move into the third idea, which is making it accessible everywhere. So let's put ourselves into the, not shoes, but into the context window of LLMs. So when we go and we start having conversation with Claude, every session we go and start, help me with the brainstorming with this client proposal. And then Claude has no idea what is this client about. Have you worked on this ICP before? Have you created a proposal for these kinds of clients before? It has no concept of it. You have to, again, upload all the documents over and over, keep iterating, give your branding ideas over and over until the iteration is done, your tokens are expired. That's where we are right now. We engage with the environment, and then we get a feedback, and we keep iterating this loop. So to deal with this problem, there was a situation where I had a really good web page that I was reading a blog post about from a latest Google Gemma model. And the only thing I remembered, because again, my brain is nobody brains is designed to store information. So I had some intuitions that it's a Gemma model. It had something to do with no encoders. And I think I read it on Substack or Medium. That was it. That was it. I knew. So that's what I asked. I asked in the Google, I asked on the cloud. Google gave me right example, like it's a Gamma 412B model, which deleted the encoders, and it's right. The answer is right, but generic. I was looking for that specific blog post because I wanted to repurpose the visuals from that. This other Claude also gave me some references to the same model, but it was again not that one exactly which I was looking for. And when I asked my second brain, it gave me the author, it gave me the URL, it gave me when it was published, since it has the time as first component, and it gave me when I saved it into my brain. And it gave me a description about it, what was it about. Exactly to the point what I was looking for. And this saves me so much time, because now I don't have to go from Google's 5 links to refer into and figure out which one I was actually looking for. So this is the power of the search, the depth and the breadth of the search, that it gives you on-spot answers, because that is my persona, that is my taste on building technologies and looking for information, and which is also, I think you guys might have heard about, taste is a new mode, because everybody has LLMs, but taste differentiates you from what you're building, what you're doing in your areas. So making it accessible gives you an edge, like how can we use it anywhere and everywhere? My answer to it is expose an MCP, which is basically create certain tools. The search knowledge does the full hybrid search, get the entity gives you, extracts the exact keywords, and the neighborhood does the searching across the landscape, and then find the path, the relations that are relevant for that thing. And this is basically also, and so many people are coining terms, which is also loop engineering. Is essentially using an agent to keep looking using these tools until you find an answer. That's what it is with a while loop. That's nothing more than that. There's this instance when I was using my cursor with an MCP, and I asked it, like, give me all the architectural diagrams that I have saved. I was working on a client proposal, and I wanted to see all the architectures that I have saved for, let's say, an agentic architecture. I gave it to cursor, and it basically extracted everything from my second brain, not just the image, but also the description, because it did the image CR on it, and created a canvas to show me all the information in one page. So now I can just browse through it. Oh, I like the idea. I like the idea. And I just club those ideas. Makes me super efficient to find that information and use that information. So this is how I primarily use my second brain to find the information right how I want to, and then use that information as I want to. Sometimes I like to use WhatsApp for saving links. How many of you guys still save links on your WhatsApp? Perfect. I used to do that too, but nowadays I just send it to my WhatsApp link. It takes that link or a picture or a voice note or a video if I record, and it saves it into my second brain. I can ask question like here is the example where I was reading something about agent harness. What was I reading about? It gave me all the list of all the articles with the connections between all the articles, like how can I use it? What is making useful for my project, and so on. So it just understands my taste, understands my key things that I like to save, and then give me results based out of that. So now WhatsApp is everywhere with me, and I can just use it anywhere and everywhere. And just same with MCP connection, replace this WhatsApp with anything, be it Slack, be it Telegram, whatever apps you guys use, that could be the replacement of it. So the two interface layers and one data layer, which is the knowledge graph. This is how I see the second brain works most effectively, how to ingest the data, how to save the data, how to use the data, and using the knowledge graph systems in one place to basically build these connections, references, and store it as a ground truth. Coming back to the core ideas, memory must build itself, build for observation, not maintenance. We don't want to invest time in maintaining a folder record anymore. LLMs can do that. We need our observations, our taste to be saved so that we can use it as we want it to. The graph is the structure, time is the first citizen. Reasoning over type. Graph gives us the power to reason on top of any data. That is why the graph is so important. And making it accessible everywhere, MCP gives your agent and humans, us, an access to our knowledge wherever we want it to be. So with that, also referring to Nawal's post, is the age of builders. So here's my template for you guys to use it and build your own knowledge graph based out of this architecture that I shared. Hope this helps. Thank you so much.